Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Ski Instructor Podcast. My name's Dave Burrows and I'm the director and owner of SnowPro Ski School based here in the Swiss Alps. You join me from a very dry and sunny Easter that we're having here in Champéry. There's no skiing obviously because all the ski resorts are shut down, but there is an end in sight. I think certainly to the Swiss shutdown, and the Swiss authorities are talking about letting us all be a bit freer in not very long, actually, about 10 days' time, by the time that you listen to this. I had the opportunity recently to interview a good friend of mine, Danny Miller. Now, Danny is, I'll say this up front, Danny has nothing to do with skiing. So, for those of you who are looking for ski-related content, you should switch off now. But there are a lot of parallels in about what we're about to talk about and skiing, and that's why I wanted to interview Dan. Now, we first got talking about this on a golf trip to Portugal. I've recently taken up the game, stupidly, a game that I left behind a long time ago, but I've got the bug back again, and we got talking to Dan because Dan's just he's about halfway through a PhD in health psychology, and we got talking about a particular injury model that we were talking about, called the Fear Avoidance Model, and how changing our thinking about injury can allow us to recover better. And I thought this was particularly applicable to one, skiers and ski instructors, for sure, because we get injured a fair bit, and we talk actually a little bit about the dissertation that I had to write for Swiss Snow Sports, which talked about fatigue in ski instructors, and I am currently halfway through yet another back injury, so more about that in the pod. But secondly, also we wanted to focus with the idea of this talk with Dan was actually to present this as a lecture to some of the young skiers that we coach and train and work with, and to roll this out to a number of schools. But the current Corona shutdown has put paid to that, so we won't be able to do that this term. So we're going to present it in the form of a podcast. Accompanying this talk, there are some notes. So there's a Dropbox link in the podcast notes, which you can have a look at also. And so in summary, the focus of this is there's a huge amount of jumping around in this podcast. So I just present the interview as is, but the main focus is on fear and injury, or fear of injury, and how we can better manage it to recover in a better way. So enjoy this podcast, and I will catch you on what will be episode 20, actually, which will be the next one. And I'm just putting together the interview for that now. So enjoy this, and I hope wherever you are locked down that ends soon. And I wish you a very, very good Easter and a good the rest of April. Welcome to the Ski Instructor Podcast. Danny Miller, how are you?
Well, good, thanks, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really, really great. We've just set the world to rights off air in terms of Corona and various other bits and pieces. So we're not going to talk about that because there is enough stuff about that going on in media in general. But I'll explain to the listener, because this podcast is sort of bi-focused, because you're not really a skier as such. No. You're not a ski instructor as such, or anything that we normally interview. But the purpose of this, I think the content will be useful for ski instructors. They get injured a lot. And secondly, I've also wanted to we were going to do this presentation, weren't we? You were going to come over here to Switzerland and do this presentation to a few of the schools that we work with. And that's been sort of knocked firmly on the head by the current times. So why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about your your journey and story. I know it really well because we're great mates. But tell me how you ended up where you are now.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for inviting me on, mate. It's good to, like I said, I was getting a bit worried. I didn't think we'd ever, get to do this. Be like you said, it's strange times. But anyway, we move on. We don't want to go into that debate. That's for another time.
Yeah.
But Dave, no, thanks, mate. Thanks for inviting me on. So I'm Danny. I'm a qualified osteopath. I'm a practicing osteopath. I'm also a trainee health psychologist. But, we've kind of come at this from a health psychology perspective, or a trainee health psychologist perspective, rather than an osteopathic perspective. So I want to make that clear because I don't want to get, because it will probably end up moulding between the two anyway, but it's going to have a bit more of a health psychologist feel to it, with living well with injury rather than looking at the mechanisms of injury and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So like no real biomechanical kind of stuff. But I'll go back to where I started. So originally, Dave, when we first met, I was working on trading floors, so a very big change. I've kind of done it the wrong way around. In 97, I started on the futures market, shouting and screaming at each other and being an orange jacket, being a general dog's body, really, Dave. Picking up cards, running positions for the locals on the futures market when it used to be down at Cannon Street in the city.
Yeah.
That kind of obviously went a bit wonky in 99 when it all kind of went into going electronic trading platforms. Then sort of fast forward 15 years, 2008 when the financial crash started, as we were talking about earlier. It was a kind of like, I had no kind of university background. I had no education background. I kind of left college when I was 16 to kind of go for this career in finance. But in 2008, when it all went a bit wobbly, it was a bit, okay, right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to get made redundant and have to find a job in a similar industry when, Lehman's were getting made redundant, closing down, Goldman's were making huge redundancies. A lot of the big banks were making huge redundancies. And I just worked for, a smaller European bank.
Yes.
And I thought, well, the competition's, I'm just not going to be able to go into another job. So, so it was then, I was kind of, as we used to, talk stuff. I was into nutrition, I was into training, I was into exercise, I was into that kind of stuff anyway. And my brother was like, Tony was like, Dan, well, why don't you, I was talking to him about it. He said, well, why don't you look at osteopathy? Because, you're going to learn everything. You're going to learn about the body, you're going to learn about the physiology, you're going to learn anatomy, you're going to learn how the body works. It's really in depth. Why don't you go in that road? I was like, all right then. So I did that. So 2010, I started on the Access course, because I didn't have any background in education, which was a kind of access to higher education. That was in 2010. 2011, I moved on to a part-time, all this was part-time. Part-time, I moved into the degree, the Masters in Osteopathy is now the University College of Osteopathy. Started that in 2011, part-time till around 2014. Yeah. Then left my job in the European Bank, and was kind of a bit upset to leave, but it felt like a natural progression. And then 2 years in clinic, like supervised clinic education, still at the University College of Osteopathy, then qualified in 2016 and loved it. I love osteopathy. I love, of course, you've got physiotherapy. That's probably for another talk, but physiotherapy and chiropractors. And I went down the osteopathy route, and I love it. I love that, working with people. I love to see how people can change. I love to see the kind of support that we can give people and help them back onto the road of recovery. But for me, Dave, it weren't enough.
It never is. It never is.
No, it never is. And I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and they said, you're never going to know enough. And it's so true.
Yeah.
When do you stop? But so fast forward a year.
If I can just ask you about it, because I think we're similar in that way in terms of our personality. So my missus often asks me this. We were sitting there the other night, and she says, are you happy? And I'm like, that's a difficult question to answer, because I'm never really happy to kind of sit where I am, and be content. For me, it's more about tomorrow, what's happening next. I wonder I wonder if that'll ever be enough. You know, probably the same for you. It sounds the same. You know, you're not just happy to be where you are.
I think as well, it's just that once you get involved in, you know, I call it academia, or you call it the human body, or, you know, coaching or whatever. And when you're working with people, be it from a healthcare perspective like I am, or a coaching perspective like, you know, like you are, you're working with a human being, and no one is the same. No one is the same. So how do you adapt to that? It's kind of, you know, how do you measure success with something like that? You can't. Because there's, you know, like if I look at my outcomes in osteopathy, if I'm honest, you know, 100% of my patients don't get better. In fact, I don't know, because you never really get to you never really spend enough time with these people to work out how, you know, okay, you can measure it objectively, but even then, you know, we're involved in people's lives, and that is inherently variable. You can't, and that goes on to, you know, that goes kind of trips into how I got into health psychology. You know, it was like I was working with patients, and I've been in practice a year, and I was enjoying it. One patient especially, you know, always it like tripped up my thinking. It was because I was like challenging manual therapy. I was a bit like, manual therapy works with a certain group, but it's not, you know, it's not effective in a larger group. I mean that, you know, a larger amount of people who have got high, you know, willing a motivation to do well and all that. It works, it makes people feel better for only a short amount of time. But then you get people with a kind of more long-term conditions that, you know, to put it bluntly, rubbing someone's back is not gonna, you know, it's not gonna help them that much. They need to take on more. They need to have some responsibility, and not that I want to, you know, wave the finger at someone. You need to be more responsible for yourself, you know, taking on long-term conditions. It's like that. It was like, I remember talking to him and his wife coming to the appointment with me, and him. And his wife did all the talking days. And I was like, what's going on here? What, you know, he's the one in pain, but you're telling his story. And it's always difficult anyway when you're dealing, you know, when you're working with people who come in as a couple, or come in as, you know, a kind of mother or elderly mother, or an elderly person, and coming in with a carer. It's really difficult. But this bloke, it threw me, because he said, all I want you to do is fix me. And I was like, well, no, that's quite difficult, because I can't fix anyone. You know, it's one thing we learn in osteopathy is you can't fix anyone. It's up to, you know, the body has its own healing mechanisms. It's up to us to support that. We can't fix people. And I was like, okay, well, but they were very motivated. Well, they come across very motivated. They're like, you know, I just want to change. You know, he was overweight. He was, you know, probably 110 kilos, quite unhealthy, very low activity levels, and was a bit like, you know, I just want to be out of this back pain. But he actually had some kind of injury. You know, he had to picking up a slab of concrete with his mate, felt something go in his back, had an injury, you know, was a, you know, injury. But, you know, his diet was out, his lifestyle was out, and by out I mean his diet wasn't the best. You know, he wasn't very healthy. You know, he would drive in his car for an hour backwards and forwards. You know, just very sedentary. And it was like, okay, yes, I want to get on holiday. You know, I want to improve. I want to start doing it. Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Let's try and work towards that. Which is kind of what I knew early stages, even before I got into psychology and health psychology, that, you know, goals are good. You know, you want to work towards something. We kind of know that. And, anyway, cut a long story short, he wasn't recovering as I'd hoped. You know, it was probably about, you know, ideally you'd like to see some kind of recovery after about 4 or 5 treatments with someone. It wasn't really, that was kind of plateauing. And he went on holiday. And 2-week holiday, living the dream, south coast of Spain, swimming, enjoying himself. Come back, Dan, I felt great on holiday, felt brilliant. Oh, brilliant! You know, what did you do? What were you doing? I was swimming, I was walking. Great, let's get you swimming again. Oh, I don't want to start swimming. But you've just told me that's what made you feel better. Where's the barrier there? And I didn't have enough experience on reflection, Dave. I didn't have enough experience to ask that question. You know, what's the barrier? Because I don't know how to handle the response. And then, so anyway, that was like, well, what is going on there? He was a motivated individual. He wanted to change. He, you know, felt better on holiday. His wife's doing all the talking. His wife is, you know, taking over the consultations. What is going on? And I was like, right, you know, manual therapy is not going to help this bloke. It's just not. All right, it might get. I said, and this was a conversation I had with him. I said, it's going to help you short term. It's going to help you for 2 or 3 days. I said, I'm happy for you to come back every week, but you're only going to get short-term relief, and it's going, and it's your finances are going to impact, and it doesn't sit well with me to do stuff like that. It just doesn't,
Yeah.
It's just that kind of routine appointments where it just doesn't, ethically, it doesn't sit well with me. I started looking at psychology, and sorry, Dave, I've gone the long way around here. I've started looking at psychology, and health psychology really stood out for me. It fitted the kind of, at the time, that kind of osteopathy, health psychology, working with people in long-term conditions and working with people in long-term pain, and all that. I thought, okay, I really like the sound of that, but I had to. My master's in osteopathy didn't just give me a route into health psychology. I had to do a master's in health psychology. So I started that in 2017, qualified with that in 2018, kind of stayed at the University of Westminster. I really liked the tutors there, and the lecturers there were really passionate about what they were doing. Went into health psychology, went qualified in, fast forward 2019, qualified in that. And it was a bit like, and I remember talking to my wife, right, Dave? I said, you know what, Rosie, it's fine. It's just like doing a master's in osteopathy. Once you do your master's, you can call yourself a health psychologist. She was like, brilliant. How long is it going to take you? 2 years, be done for 2019. Great, right? And halfway through the health psychology course, hang on a minute, I might have to do a doctorate here. Hang on a minute, that could take up 3 years. They didn't tell me about that, but, well, partly I didn't look. I was just assuming, right?
Yeah.
And she said, so I had to have this uncomfortable conversation with my wife, like sort of Christmas time, 2018, 2019. I'm not going to be done in 2019. I'm probably going to be done in 2022. You what? You Wally, what happened there? I was like, I thought I had to do, I've probably got to do some kind of PhD or some kind of like next stage training and all that. She was like, you Wally, why didn't you read the small print? Don't worry about it. I'll get done. Leave it with me. Right? So anyway, where am I now? I started on the professional doctorate in. I won't bore you with ins and outs of it, but I started on the professional doctorate as a trainee health psychologist.
Okay.
So that's where I am now. It's kind of a part-time degree which really fits. Hopefully in 3 years, it probably might take a little bit longer now with what's happening, but that's fine. I'm on the professional doctorate in health psychology. Part of what we're doing now is part of the kind of consultancy part of it. You said, Dan, I'm really interested in fear. I'm interested in about living well with injury. So that's brilliant. That really helps me. And I'm also doing some research on fear, funnily enough. So the impact that has on the individual, but more towards chronic musculoskeletal pain and the way that how is that a barrier? Why is it a barrier to recovery? So that's where I am now. I'm a clinic tutor at the University College of Osteopathy. I've gone back to that. But we're not seeing patients at the moment, so we're kind of a bit more of a virtual clinic.
Yeah.
So now I've kind of tried to separate it a little bit. So I've separated my osteopathy because I don't. And I was talking with one of my supervisors on the professional doctorate. She was like saying to me, "Don't blend it in too early. Don't confuse yourself because there's a lot. Osteopathy is at one level." Health psychology, doctorate in health psychology is at a very different level. So don't blend it in, they separate it. So that's kind of where I was at, because my kind of goal, I was thinking, well, I'd like to really bring it in together. It's like, well, and this is a good thing about having supervisors on these courses, they trip your thinking up. Like, no, separate it. Don't confuse yourself. It's complicated. It's really complex. Complex in a sense that you've got to be very critical about the research and everything's developed from the evidence. So, that's where I am now. Trainee health psychologist. I love it. I love reading about it. It's like you saying, Dave, when are you going to, when do you stop? Once you're in this road, there's no amount of evidence that's ever going to say, actually, I think I've cracked it with human beings. I think if anyone ever says that, or I ever get to that point, I'm in a bad place.
Because
you can't.
Yeah. I think when you start to think everything, that's the difficulty, right?
Yeah, you don't, and it's like you probably realise in yourself, Dave, at this sort of level, it's like the more you go into it, the less you realise you know.
Yeah,
it just, which in a way fascinates me in its own right. Because, and then in a way you have to try and work out. Well, I've only got today. I've only ever got, how is my satisfaction or my success measured? I don't think it is. I don't think you can measure it. I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
So how when I sit back and I sit down and like touching on what you were saying earlier, if I look at where I am now, right now with what I've learned, I can say I'm happy with what I'm learning. I'm happy in the direction I'm going.
Yeah.
Because it's only ever going to look. And I'm kind of trying to stay open-minded about it because, we've got there's 5 key competencies that I have to complete for to be a health psychologist. I'm only doing 2 of them. So it's consultancy and research, and then the other 2 are teaching and training and a psychological intervention, and there's professional skills that kind of goes through the whole lot. But what I like it is that you have to try and stay very open-minded to it, because there's 4 areas there that we get trained at a really good level, a high level. So where could we go with that? So that's quite exciting. So the long way around is it, Dave. We'll look at this from a health psychology perspective. So that was a very long introduction, so I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. No, it's very interesting for me, because I think when I can relate to having the tutors like that. We had the dissertation that you have to write to get the full Swiss ski qualification. They actually have a couple of guys there that sort of moderate your idea. I don't know if that happens in academics as well. I imagine it does. But they'll look at what your idea is for your paper that you're going to write, and then they'll come back with a suggestion. And in mine, they said, the scope of what you're planning to write about. And mine was fatigue in ski instructors over the course of a typical ski season. And maybe we can chat about that a little bit later. But when you're up there doing repetitive exercise day after day of a similar type, my findings were that everything that I read said that that kind of chronic exercise in effect is not good for you. If you go day after day, you don't have any recovery time. So we've got ski instructors that are up here working 6 hours a day on a mountain day after day after a day, and it's not good for them, in fact, over the course of a long season.
You've got mental fatigue there as well, because you're looking after people, aren't you, on a slope, and that's that's dangerous. It can be dangerous. You probably tell me more about it than I ever know, but it's like,
no, it's mentally tiring, Dan. It really is. I mean, let's say you're up there day after day. Not only is it physically tiring, although you reach a sort of economy of effort. You're not going 100% all the time, but it's still what all the guys who in the primal movement, they would call it chronic cardio. So your heart rate is above a certain heart rate, but it's not max anaerobic heart rate. It's aerobic heart rate, and that isn't good. It'd be like riding a road bike, for like 6 hours a day or something like that, at a fairly low level of intensity. But it's above it's more fatiguing than say walking would be, so it's in that zone where it causes breakdown and inflammation, and
it's like you said, you hit the nail on the head. You just don't have a chance to recover.
No, you don't. And then the mental side is,
even in training, if you're training, that's not where you develop. It's the recovery where you develop. That's where you recover. That's where tissue repair, and that's where mental repair and all that sort of stuff. It's training, isn't it? When you're training, that's where but it's in the recovery part where you grow. Yeah. You become stronger and you become fitter and all that sort of stuff. But if you're not getting that recovery, then it's just like exactly what you said, general fatigue.
Yeah, it is. And then you add into that sort of mental fatigue of, having to think on the fly and teach on the fly, and in addition to that, think for other people. So with children, for example, you're teaching children, often you're making decisions on safety for them because they're not really capable of taking those decisions themselves. So it's all round, it's quite a tiring thing. And like you say, if you don't have that recovery period, let's say you just do this day after day after day for an entire season, and you hear guys that go out to these kind of places like Australia in the summer season where it's just like 6 days a week, 6 hours a day, non-stop. And then obviously you want to go skiing on your day off, right? So you go up the mountain again on your day off. And what that does is it causes just like a general inflamed state of your body, where the immune system is like just constantly on edge all the time, because it's just like got so much going on that actually over time, this is what I found anyway in my dissertation, that, or everything that I read said that that causes that causes like a breakdown in tissues, it causes breakdown in ligament joints and all that sort of stuff. And it's no wonder that people get injured over the course of the season sometimes.
But it's also, those inflammatory markers create a sensitivity to pain as well. If you get in like, all right, we probably save it for another day. The definition of pain, there's a definition, but it's argued so much in the literature.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk on social media, and all that sort of stuff. So we won't go down that road. But, if you're in that inflamed state chronically, it does create, there's a guy called Lawrence Mosley and David Butler talk about how that chronically inflamed state creates a sensitivity to pain. Which makes sense. It's going to change the sensitivity recovery. It's going to, your tissue's not getting a chance to repair, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, so this comes at quite a timely time because this morning, as we discussed already, I was putting on my pants, and this morning I lifted up my right leg to try and get my right leg into my pants, and my lower back existing problem, L4 disc or whatever it is, went again. So now I've got a severe kink in my body coming from the waist. I can't stand upright, and here I am again looking down the barrel of like another God knows how many weeks and chiro sessions to get this back straight again, which is a massive pain in the butt.
Literally.
I'm literally, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. So we are, this happens to me all the time, and it's quite debilitating. It's exhausting being in pain. This has only happened since like 9 o'clock this morning, but I'm exhausted already because it just hurts so much. I can barely walk. But what we are planning to talk about is the Fear Avoidance Model. And it's something that we talked about when we were in Portugal in November, and I thought it'd be a great topic for us to talk about. So, do you want to sort of run with that, and I'll jump in as and when.
So, Dave, what I will say first and foremost, right? For your listeners and all that sort of stuff, that if you have, it's a kind of disclaimer, really. Like if you have got any concerns, this isn't to suggest that you've got to stay and work it out, go to activities, going to recover quicker and all that.
Yeah.
It's not about if you've got any concerns whatsoever, you've had any serious falls, or you've had it, especially down a ski site or anywhere, go and see someone. Don't try and be a hero. Don't listen to me about what I'm going to say. Go and see. If you've got a concern, go and see someone.
Yeah.
Especially if it's your child, they've had a serious fall, it doesn't hurt to go and get it checked out for head injury or, some kind of whiplash, or if your child's mood's out of character, if you're seeing a cut that's not stopping bleeding, don't hesitate. Especially, because sometimes, with kids and all that, we've got kids of our own. It's like, they're fine.
They bounce pretty well, don't they?
Yeah. So I just want to say that, be quite clear. If it's something you're unsure about, it's okay to be scared about it. That's fine. But it's just at what point does fear become too much?
Yeah.
But any concerns, see a medical professional, see someone who's, see a physio, see a chiro, see an osteopath, see a doctor, see someone.
Yeah.
And then you and then it's like from, and then we can kind of go from there. But, so I think as well, it's like, we talk about fear, but I suppose really we want to see what is fear? What is fear? What does fear do to us? And fear evolutionary is to kind of, makes sense, doesn't it, really, Dave? You want to be, you look at evolution, you look at, if you're scared and all that sort of stuff, it's a healthy place to be. It stops us from doing something that's probably, going to stop us from getting injury.
Yeah.
And some people, it's an emotional reaction. It's like it's a learning it's an adaptive survival mechanism. But can become maladaptive.
Yeah.
Like you saying, you've hurt your back, rightly so. Your body's saying, it's putting out like some kind of message to say, don't be silly over the next couple of days.
Yeah,
that's
sure
healthy,
is.
right?
Yeah,
that's healthy. That's that as long as it doesn't, it's like, and it's that kind of fear that it can be, it's disabling. It's that. But what can happen is, that persistent avoidance, that that kind of builds up momentum, doesn't it? Because if I don't do short term, if I don't do something, I feel all right. I'm not going to do that again. It kind of changes it changes our experience, our human experience, which is to go out and explore. That's just what it is.
Well, we're seeing that, aren't we? We're seeing that on quite a large population scale at the moment, aren't we? This is what there's, in terms of relative number. And I know that we said we wouldn't talk about this flipping coronavirus, but aren't we? Isn't that what we are seeing in a huge scale? The media is pumping out non-stop fear stories, and it's making the population fearful. When the relative threat, relatively speaking, compared to overall planet population size, is very low, or very, very small. And so that's a great example, isn't it, of a kind of fearful state.
Well, and this is it, like again, I was talking to the supervisor about this. It's like, where's the psychological impact in that? What's going on there? And it fits some of the. All right, we'll talk about the fear avoidance model, but there's another model called the common sense model of self-regulation, which come about in the 70s about fear. It was coming about fear messages, how they wanted to change health behaviour, so they put out fear messages. I think it might say something on smoking or something like that.
Yeah.
So smoking's bad, it causes lung cancer and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Stop smoking. But what would happen is it would only happen in the short term. So you'd get a short term effect on behaviour changes, like exactly what we're seeing now, but it only works in the short term.
So actually, as a population, then that does kind of explain what we're seeing from some quarters with regards to this current crisis where people are just sick of it and starting to question the narrative. Would that be the case? Yeah, it's like because people eventually, it's like we're human beings, aren't we? We're not meant to stay inside. Yeah,
and it's that isolation is bad. It is. And how they're going to come out of this? You think if you've got elderly people who are listening to government guidance and they're staying indoors, rightly so, because they, they're at risk. Yeah. But these people, their social experience or their social kind of being is going out to the shops, talking to the shopkeeper.
Yeah, isolation is a big issue for old people, isn't it? And
massively.
Yeah,
you've got social withdrawal, or you got loneliness, and it's they're two very different things. That loneliness is like all dependent on your relationships, but the quality of the relationships. Can you phone someone up and go, I'm struggling? And if the elderly don't have, they struggle with technology, they don't have a phone or they don't have, whatever it is, their response to that is to go out and talk to people, But it's we digress a little bit there, Dave.
Yeah,
but it is. But this does fit in with the fear avoidance model. Pain. It is socially learned. It's an adaptive mechanism. We learn it. Part of the definitions of pain, is on the IAS, the International Association of something pain. I can't remember that BS bit, but pain can it sort of fits in with fear. Pain can serve as an adaptive role. It can have adverse effects on function and well-being. It's like it's an individual experience that's been learned. So and we can apply that to people who are skiing, or see people with back injuries, or see people who fall and hurt themselves. Fear in that kind of is that kind of, it can impact you how you do stuff. As you were saying, I've got a back injury now. I could be out for 3 weeks, however many weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly the case, isn't it? Okay, so let's move into that then. So the fear avoidance model, or fear avoidance in general, because I am, let's use me as an example because I'm here and I'm injured. But this is for me, I walk around and my movements are made in a certain way with a fear that I am at some point going to re-hurt my lower back again.
Yeah.
And it's pain,
that's a healthy fear, right?
Well, it is, but it also limits me, right? It limits what I can do. I don't go and pick up heavy boxes and stuff, even though I can. I move in a certain way. I can't go to certain places with my movements, and and that limits me in my daily life. And I wonder if there's another way that I could be thinking about it. I suppose that's what we're talking about with regards to fear avoidance model, right?
So we have like exactly that. We're using an example. You had an injury, right?
Mm.
And then you have a pain experience.
Yeah.
Which is what you're going through now.
Yeah, sure is.
Right? So you either go one way and we confront it. We say, it's fine. I've just injured my back a little bit. That's fine. I'm healthy. I'm fit. I'm a strong guy. I do a lot of activity. Okay, that's fine. All it just means I've got to step back a little bit. But I confront it and I say to them, but it's okay. I'm going to recover. I've recovered in the past, so I'll recover again. Mm. So you kind of confront that. And it's funny actually, because the fear avoidance model was changed slightly because on that confrontation they've added in optimism and coping mechanisms. What's the individual's like on that? Mm-hmm. But that's you're in an acute phase, Dave, which means you're in hours to days kind of thing.
Yeah.
But where it becomes an issue is if people had that. You think now you're 3 months down the line and you're at the same state. Mm. So you've not recovered as you'd hoped. You're still having that pain experience 3 months down the line. When, I don't want to go into the mechanisms too much, but, tissue should heal by that point. Mm. That should heal. So what is it going on there? Why is it that someone doesn't recover, like someone else does? What then? And the fear avoidance model obviously uses fear as the main construct. And it says, well, what happens in that pain experience that people at some point they're going to catastrophizing, or negative, like that kind of negative emotion, which is normal to have. I don't want to say that you shouldn't have it because, it's part of the protecting mechanism that we want our body to recover and we recover stronger. There's I was reading somewhere that I can't remember what, it might have been a podcast I was listening to or it might have been something else, but they call it positive readaptation. Mm-hmm. So don't call it injury, call it positive readaptation. To say it's okay to have an injury. We get injured; it's a normal part of life. Mm. But what can we do to help us recover? But so we kind of get this circle that goes into pain catastrophizing, and so we catastrophize. Oh no, this is the worst it could possibly be. I'm never going to be as fit and healthy as I once was. We go into this kind of thinking, which is I have it, and I do what I do.
Yeah.
I have that, when I get injured, I have that experience, but it's like kind of saying, no, it's okay. This is just right. Okay. What can I do that's going to help me recover? Mm. So you can walk around. Okay. You might have, you can try and get yourself in a comfortable position and wiggle yourself around a little bit to try and, actually, maybe that's not as bad as I thought. So you confront it, but sometimes that might not happen. So, that catastrophizing, I'm never, you think about it in a skiing, I'm never going to be able to be a high level skier. I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to do, it's that never, catastrophizing. But then, so you get that catastrophizing and then you might have pain related fear, or they call it like pain related anxiety, where, you've got pain related fear where like you're in this pain experience and you're fearful of the pain. Rightly so, it hurts.
Sure
let's not take away from that. If you're telling me it hurts, it hurts. Pain is a subjective experience. It hurts. I can't say, well, you're lying. How can I say that? Because you're not. You're in pain. So you get that pain-related fear. But what sometimes the fear avoidance model doesn't begin some of the diagrams is you get pain-related anxiety as well, which kind of feeds that. You're right. You get that anxiety related. What happens if I do that and I'm going to get in this amount of pain again? So you've got pain-related fear, which is being in fear in that moment, or you're not in pain, but you're worried about doing something that's going to cause you pain.
Yeah. Now that's kind of how a lot of the time that I end up, I wouldn't say spend a lot of time like that, but there isn't very many days that go by without me being very, very conscious of how I move because I just don't want, it's just exhausting being in this state again. So yeah, okay, and that would then probably relate into the next point. I should explain, listener, that we're looking at a slide deck together, which I will put in the notes to the podcast, so you can kind of have a look at this as well. But I suppose that relates, goes into the next point, which would be like what fear of actually moving to certain places For fear
avoidance.
For fear.
You know, avoidance has a short-term effect on behaviour, right? So you avoid it. Oh, I feel better now. I won't do that again. I'm not. There's that kind of that negative valence where you kind of like, oh, hang on, I've moved in a certain way and I didn't get pain, or I didn't bend over as much and I didn't get as much pain. I'm not going to go as far. So you get that part of, you start, you know, you think of the angle of our joint and the joints there, our spine, right? It's dynamic, it's strong, it's got so much supportive tissue around it, and especially someone, David, you know, at that highest level of skiing, your body, you know, you've got a strong spine. You know,
mine doesn't feel very strong right now. I have to.
No, it doesn't, and it won't, right?
Yeah.
But you have to look at your history and you say, "But I've recovered," and let's look at where I am at my current state. You know, okay, I've got pain, and that's fine. It hurts, and I can't put my pants on straight. But you know, I've still got to put my pants on. I'm not going to upset my wife. You know, that's just you know, horrific for the poor woman. You know, you've got to wear underwear, Dave.
Well,
right?
I might after this episode, I think I might be going commando. You know, it's too difficult.
No one wants to see that, Dave. No one wants to see it, mate.
But I suppose this is one of these things, right? Because now I have a certain fear of that movement. So maybe I'm going to adapt my behaviour, which I don't really want to have to do, but maybe I'm going to have to put my pants on in a different way. I know we're sort of jesting here, but this is actually a real thing. Now, I don't necessarily want to go down that road, but should I?
Oh, but you can see what would happen. Like, you know, I was doing a presentation to some master's students on the health psychology, and we were talking about the social aspects of pain. Right. And like, where, you know, like when I start talking about the fear avoidance model, right? And this was a study done, a qualitative study, so an interview-based study, finding about experience. I feel like I'm in a constant state of anxiety, waiting for the next injury and trying to preempt anything that could cause pain.
Yeah.
So you can kind of think, you know, this social withdrawal, you know, it's like, and again, you know, this is a study. This was studies done. This was someone it kind of related to running. You know, they had an Achilles tendinopathy, so they had pain at the back of their heel through running. I don't want to say too much running, through running. And, you know, they're feeling frustrated. You know, I want to run, but I'm seeing my peers, I'm seeing my frat mates go to races and they're winning races. And this is what it said, getting personal bests and they're progressive, but I'm stuck. I'm stuck here. It's like you and it's stuck there, being looking out the window and your mate's skiing.
Yeah.
You know, it's your life. It's your livelihood. It's your work. You know, you want to be out there. That's what you enjoy doing. That's why you do it. That's why you put the hours into it. You know, if you have this fear behind it. There was one here that talks about, here it is. It talks about how this lady was miserable because she's invited places, but she's worried about the amount of stairs she might have to climb, so she doesn't go. Yeah, you know, it's kind of, you know, if we go back to that, you know, the fear avoidance model, and you look at that avoidance, that of hypervigilance.
Yeah,
you know, you kind of, you know, but that's that. You know, you're withdrawing from society. Right, today it's forced on us, but you know, you think, you know, we only recognise it when it's taken away from us.
Yes. You
know that. You know, you know, and it's like realise, you know, I'm working from home. I'm with, you know, my wife's here, my kids are downstairs. Oh, I want to pop out and get a sandwich, and I can't do it. I want to pop out and get a coffee, but the poor coffee blokes had to shut.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go out for a walk, but you know, the parks have been shut.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm having to, like, avoidance is being kind of forced on me. So, but you can kind of see how then that, I think you've got the fear avoidance model slide there as well.
Well, yeah, let's have a look at that now. So this is a good little segue into it. So for those of you that can see it, and what I might do actually is put this as the logo of the podcast because some people can see it. So I'll cut and paste this somehow into it. We have initial kind of pain. So something injures us, or pain comes, and there's a little sort of downward arrow to something that says pain experience. So I'm currently in the pain experience zone. I'm experiencing pain, and I am here. And then what we have then is a sort of junction where you could go left and right.
Yeah.
And left sends us on a sort of circle. And I think probably we should explore the left circle first, and then we'll go to the right circle, which is, I guess, an alternative. Later, or not a circle, it's a U. So do you wanna take us through that circle and how it looks for those who are kind of stuck in my stupid little circle of reality?
So you've got the fear of pain's that next construct, or that that kind of next part of the circle. On the one you can see, there's loads of these out. There's loads of different, there's loads of constructs. Like the one I was looking at has got pain catastrophizing in it, or fear of pain. And when people when you're in pain, it's not a nice place to be. It causes a lot of stress and a lot of discomfort, and it's tiring. Like you say, it's tiring because you've got to think about every single movement that you do. And so it's rightly, if you're fearful. But this is the thing. I don't want to say that if you're scared of something, it's a bad place to be. It's okay to be fearful. I want to make that quite clear, that it's okay to be a bit fearful, as with anything, to a certain extent. Are you able to share that fear? Are you able to? This is why I'm going to, like at the beginning, talk to a professional about it. Let them challenge those fears. But then, rightly so, avoidance of activity, exactly what you were saying. Now I've got to put my pants on a different way round, or I've got to sit differently. I've got to move differently. So I'm not just going to sit on the end of bed and chuck my pants on. I've got to think about it. And that's tiring. And all right, and you put that to someone, avoidance of activity, you put it into your work domain, Dave. So if you're a ski coach and you've got to avoid your activity, you've got to avoid your work livelihood. That's where you earn money, right? You've got to, but that's where you also get your kind of satisfaction from life. For helping people, helping develop people. But if all of a sudden now we're starting to avoid stuff, again, I want to make it, in the short term, it's probably, I don't want to say you've got to avoid you've got to rest on your back for however many times. That's not what I'm saying. So it's more probably saying, like, change your activity, adapt your activity. That's why I think it's good to see a professional, because hopefully they'll help you adapt your kind of what you're doing on a daily basis to say, okay, you're in pain, that's fine, but let's work with it. Let's see what we can do, rather than saying, right, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. Because, like, as the next bit is the disuse, the disability, the depression. If all of a sudden, we're telling people, not that hopefully now it doesn't happen so much because it's trying to come through society, but you're avoiding activity, avoiding the things you enjoy. It's going to make you feel rubbish. It's like Sunday, if all of a sudden say, okay, you've got to rest up for 2 weeks, don't play with your kids. Because you might injure it. That's the wrong message. And as a parent, that's you want to play with your kids, right? As much as you want to play with them sometimes, and you want to go bonkers with them. That's part of the fun of being a parent. But likelihood, if I all of a sudden say, this is, I bring it into a little bit my experience with working with the self-employed. If I all of a sudden tell them you've got to stop working, they go, hang on a minute, I've got to put food on the table.
Well, that's right.
If I say to you, okay, you've got to step away from your business, he's like, well, that's not really possible.
No.
So, for part of being in, I'm going into osteopathy a little bit, and working with people, that's where it becomes that's where it's a challenge, because if you've got someone who's in that level of fear and they're scared. I saw a patient once, and she was working in fashion, and she'd injured her back. And I think it was the Paris Fashion Show or something like that, quite a big thing. She was, rightly so, she was scared, but she felt she had to go. She was like, I think she was kind of hoping that I'd tell her not to go. But, for her, but it's like, if I don't go, I'm missing out on business opportunities, I'm missing out on the latest trends, I'm missing out. No, we're talking about like the financial markets. If you're out of it, you're not in part of that environment. And she's talking, so she's like, oh, do you think I should go? I was like, well, look, okay, you get in the train. Let's break it down, right? You get in the train there. You can get up and you can walk around on the train. So you've already told me that you feel better when you move. So if you can move on the train, then surely that's a good thing. Okay, it's all in it's management in your control. Try it and see how you feel, right? Then she went. Then I said she went to the fashion show. I said, look, if you're standing around a lot, it's okay to sit down. It's okay to go and have a break. You don't have to be there at the front of it all the time, dip in and out of it. And anyway, she went and she said actually it was all right. She was in pain, but she managed it. But what I don't like to then do is say people to put. Can you imagine if all of a sudden we say to her, you can't go? you can't go. You know, that fear of missing out, you know.
That has certain psychological effects, doesn't it?
Yeah, so that's why now it can make people feel rubbish. And if you think about it, if we talk about it, okay, we were going to do this to kids and to parents. If kids aren't part of that life, you know, if they're not challenging and you know, feeling like what it's like to feel fear, you know, and we withdraw from it, you know, what message are we sending out? So, you know, so that part of that depression and that disuse is, you know, we feel shit Dave, we feel rubbish, I should say. You know, if we have to withdraw from, I feel rubbish, you know. I'm like playing touch rugby and all that sort of stuff. I was sprinting the other summer, Dave. I was going like the clappers. I felt something ping in my hip, and I like that. That's not right. That shouldn't go ping. Yeah, and I've got to stop. You know, I've had to physically stop, and I enjoy it because that's where I enjoy life. Yeah. So, you know, so you're right. So you get back into another pain experience, or you do something that, you know, like catches your breath away. That pain-related anxiety, that pain-related catches your breath away. So now we're locked in that cycle.
Yeah,
and how, you know, and. So I get a pain experience again. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. That, you know, that fear of pain, that pain. I shouldn't have done that. Why did I do it? I'm stupid. I'm this. I'm that. That narrative that we tell ourselves. Yeah, it's not healthy.
But then you're heading back round the circle, aren't you? And that's the.
Yes. So you withdraw more. Because you become more fearful of pain. You become more fearful of, you know. And it's funny. It takes, you know. It's like I found this study, right, Dave? Something that I was looking at. I was looking at a kind of different model around. It's like quite a recent model of pain, and it talked about how pain, fear, the experience is embedded in the environment, right? So it talks about how our environment, we become more sensitive to it that if we're in pain. Exactly like what you said. I'm worried about doing it. I'm worried about bending different. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Yeah. And rightly so, and I suppose it fits with skiers. It talked about how situations then if we're looking at a situation, it can either embed fear in us or safety or threat, or it could be, you know, it's like, you know, you can be walking around in a nice environment. You know, in London today, we're lucky to have a nice day, walking out, you know, it feels nice. And there was a study, I can't say it, Stefanucci, you're probably better off at saying it, Dave. Right? They did this experiment in 2008. They put people, I think, were they in pain? I can't remember if they were in pain or not. Or they might have been healthy individuals. But anyway, what they did, they had a steep hill. Yeah. Right? And they had some participants stand on a wooden box. Right? And they had another set of participants standing on a skateboard. Right? Those that were the standing, and this was how fear, they were saying that the title of the study is Fear Influences the Perception of a Geographical Slant. Okay. So those people that were standing on the wooden box didn't see the hill as steep as those standing on the skateboard. Yeah. So if we put that in contrast to you guys, right, who have got back pain, and all of a sudden you're on a normal geographical, what you would class as normal for you. Yeah, right? Yeah. Is now looks more dangerous. Yeah, it will do because of the environment. So not only have you got your fear there of hurting yourself, you've got that fear of someone else hurting themselves. Which now that's how then you become. Is your coaching or your teaching going to change because of the way you feel? Is that environment changes the way we are? I think it just nails it for me. You know, it's probably got a little bit of carryover for you. You know, so what my environment's going to change and my thinking's going to change. Yeah. If I'm in pain. Yeah. You know, and fear is a strong. You know, this I'm sort of jumping around. It's called a 5E model. That there is talk about embedded, but you've got that emotive side of it as well. You know, that interpretation of people, facts. You know, ourselves, our focus to where our attention, our environment, and fear is a strong emotion of that. You know, it's a motive. It's, you know, that fear of damage. You know, so once we're in that cycle, Dave, it's really hard to challenge it because, you know, if you say to someone, no, you go down that slope, you're going to be fine. One, I don't know that, but I've got to try and challenge that fear a little bit, but we grade it, you know, so it's really hard. And this is only part of a model that can only really explain it a little bit. And this model even gets challenged in the literature because it's the fear of is it a fear avoidance model, or is it a fear of pain behaviour model?
Okay.
You know, so it's all right. We're arguing over semantics.
Yeah.
And
All right.
language.
So we've, you know, I'm 100% convinced that I keep going around this circle, but let's try and challenge our thinking a little bit. So the alternative route would be to come to my pain experience where I am now, and instead of turning left, I would turn right. And right is trying to be a different way of thinking for me, in terms of how I go about trying to change my mindset a little bit and change my way of being, I suppose. So where do we go from here? So I'm in pain, but the next bit says no fear. Now, what does that mean in terms of?
I mean, I think it's very blunt, isn't it? I mean, you've got like, to that sense, it feels like you've got 0 to 100, doesn't it? There's
it does. I mean, it's difficult not to be fearful when you can't walk.
Yeah, so you have a pain experience, right?
Yeah.
Like what you're going through at the moment.
Yeah.
So having no fear about that is kind of it's the kind of, you know, you're gonna have, even doing what I do, I'm scared of pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared of something, right? Put it in context, right, Dave? A little bit off track, right? We found a mouse in our house the other day, right? Gone. We ain't seen it since, right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to go to sit on the toilet downstairs because I don't want it to run across my feet.
Oh, come on. It's just a mouse. What you want to do is get a cat like we've just got.
It's just a mouse,
this
right?
stupid cat that we've got. It just keeps bringing in mice. Okay, it's brought in all sorts of stuff, this cat that we've got. He's brought in mice, worms. He brought in a live shrew the other day and then let it go in the house. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? This cat is chaos. It causes chaos in my house.
But you've nailed it, right? You've just said to me, it's just a mouse.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying all of a sudden we say it's just back pain.
No,
I can't say that, right? Because again, it's a subjective experience, and it's, what you say is exactly how it is.
Yeah.
Right? But I can't just say it's just back pain, just carry on.
No, that's true. Right? So your experience of the mouse is different to my experience of the mouse.
Yeah, and likewise, it's an individual experience, right? So all of a sudden, to say, so this is why we have to, working with people like this, we have to say, no, okay, what your experience is your subjective experience, right? I can't challenge that. I can't tell you where you're lying. It's not as bad as you think it is, because it is to you. It's stopping you from doing stuff.
Yes.
So, we have to challenge that a little bit on that model and say, okay, that probably could suggest to some people that you're going to have no fear. To get out of this experience, you've got to have no fear.
So are you saying, actually no fear could be instead be the word acceptance, maybe?
Definitely. And that's a key construct, I think. And this is what they're trying to bring into the fear avoidance model. This is where it's being challenged in the literature. Well, that seems to for me to come out of this experience.
Yeah.
And this is why we've got, it's good to talk about this stuff. And, hopefully you guys will understand that it's okay to have fear, right? It's okay. It's going to stop us in the short term, right? But we don't want to go to the other side of that and go into a fear of pain. But we want to just accept that it's okay to be in pain, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the human experience. It's what makes us human. It's healthy for us to be in pain because it says to us, okay, maybe it's time to just change something a little bit.
Yeah.
So that kind of, we confront it. So that's no fear and confrontational in the model that you got there. Is probably, well, hang on, how can I confront something that doesn't exist? So no fear. So I'm confronting. What am I confronting? So it's kind of that. I think there it's on a scale. And it's okay to be on a scale. So we've got. So if you're coming to see me, I'm going to say, okay, well, what can we do? Where are we at this moment in time?
Okay, so if we replace the word no fear with acceptance, and then the next step is this sort of, right, okay, confrontation, you could almost kind of replace the words with that and say, right, okay, so what is it that we can do? Like action in effect. Yeah,
exactly. And this, so it's that kind of, what is it? It's like, I can't remember I saw this, but it's like, motivation doesn't breed action. It's action that breeds motivation. So we've gone off on the little side. So I do something. Oh, actually, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
I'll do that again. So, so for example, if you can't bend forward, touch your toes, I don't know if you can anyway, right? I might have you, if we've got a massage table or a kitchen table or something like that, I might get you resting your hands on the table to just so you just bend forward a little bit. Yeah. It's completely under your control. And then I might get you wiggling the hips a little bit. So you go, hang on, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that kind of, I do it, I feel all right. And then I do it again. So it helps recover. It's not to say that it's going to recover any quicker than, your body's going to recover as it needs to. But the movement, I'm dipping into a little bit of osteopathy here. The movement helps. It helps with the fluid flow. It helps with, if I've got pain and my body's trying to recover and it's going to develop some kind of waste, that waste has to go somewhere. So if I'm not moving, is there something that's building up that's irritating the tissue again? Is it irritating something that's not? So if I'm moving, if I'm wiggling the hips a little bit, it's just giving it a chance to just create a bit of a flow. So the body's having a chance to bring in more nutrition, more healthy blood, oxygen, name it what you will, just by wiggling my hips. So then that makes me feel better because it's not as bad as I thought it was. This is why I said it from the start. Work with someone with this. Don't listen to, I don't know, someone on some ski group saying I've recovered like this, maybe you should do it that way. It's probably not the best advice to take. It's healthy, it's supportive, but see someone who can work with you and help you confront this stuff. Professionals will help. A good professional now, is kind of will understand where the evidence is and say, right, okay, let's not stop you from doing something. Let's try and maybe adapt it. Yeah, let's adapt to what you do because that helps our recovery. So, if I'm working, I don't think, the place where I work is in London, in sort of like southwest London, and they go skiing a lot, and I do see some skiers, but, you probably want to work with someone who's going to help you, okay, so maybe you can't do, maybe we'll try and leave this for a bit, but we'll do it this way instead. So you're confronting it, so, and then if you're confronting it, it's that kind of, again, it's like where, if I'm going into fear, like sort of avoidance and hypervigilance, this way I'm accepting it. It's okay to be in pain, but maybe I can do this, this, and this. All right, I might not be able to ski, or I might not be able to do this, but I can do other stuff. I might be able to work on some other skills, or I might be able to work on something. That's where you can probably take that over from me. But you can work on other stuff. It doesn't mean okay. It's not like unless it says fear of pain or no, or fear of pain or no fear. It's like, well, what's in between that? Where am I on that scale? And there is it's like some of the sort of stuff that I was looking at. This is where it gets quite interesting in health psychology because okay, we've got the fear avoidance model. What can I attach to that other side of it? What other model can I attach to the other side where it's going to help me challenge confrontation and all that, it's like all that sort of stuff. So some of it might be self-efficacy. So do I have the confidence do I have the belief in myself to do something? So, and this is it. The fear avoidance model doesn't really talk about self-efficacy. It just talks about confrontation and recovery. But if you apply other stuff to it, how can I help manage it? And there's some of the, especially now, some of the stuff that I was looking at, I don't know, Dave, if you've got the slides there, like how can we manage? Yeah. So I went down to this theory. I've come away from the fear avoidance model, but this one is more based around basic psychological needs. So this model talks about that our basic psychological needs are how do we relate to people? Can we make our own decisions in recovery? So hopefully a good therapist, will kind of challenge that a little bit and say, they'll put it onto you and say, well, what do you want to do? You've got some back pain at the moment. Where are we at? What do you want to try and achieve on your daily life? And, that competence, can I do it? Am I confident in it? But I don't know why I put that, Dave, motion is lotion.
Well, no, I think it's true, actually.
It's cliche, isn't it?
No, but it's not. There's two elements to this. One, I think the power of the mind is hugely underrated in terms of its in terms of its ability to help us. That's for one. The shifting in mindset is hugely important in terms of the ability to put these things in perspective. And I often use that in many situations in my life, where I'll do something called a reframe. So something might be terrible right now, but then you'll sort of try and look at it from a completely different angle, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah.
So for example, coronavirus shutdown, although we said we wouldn't talk about that, a coronavirus shutdown has allowed me to have a really good conversation with Alicia, who looks after my back office, and we've put in place a whole bunch of stuff that means that we're going to be bigger and better and much more prepared and much more secure in terms of our technology next year, in terms of the diary system that the ski instructors use, right? So that's one other way of thinking about this thing. Yeah, it's rubbish right now, but actually I've used that time effectively. So there's another way of thinking of the same thing.
It's exactly that in other things. If we get injured, and it's, I don't know if it's probably a little bit late. I don't know if I put it in this bit, but I definitely had it. Definitely talking about somewhere. What else can I improve? What else can I learn? And it's very easy to say, but really difficult to do. Because my own personal critique about the fear avoidance model, when you're talking about it, it's quite negatively valenced. Like, I'm talking about pain catastrophization, I'm talking about avoidance, I'm talking about depression. It's very negative valence. But if you talk about some of these basic psychological needs, it's one of the 7 of these kind of models within a bigger model, that's self-determination theory. When you start talking about that, or you start talking about self-efficacy, it becomes a bit more positively valenced, a little bit like, okay, well, what can we do? Okay, that's like you spoke about, we accept it, that's fine. I'm in pain. It's normal it's all part of a normal experience. What can I do? Where is my confidence? Can I help with someone else? And that was part of the studies, and some of the sports psychology stuff I was looking at was really interesting. What come out about this, like, relatedness to others. All right, I'm in pain, but how can I help someone else? And in effect, if I'm in this pain, or I've had this injury, or I've had this experience, and I've come through it, you're actually quite an inspiration to someone else, especially a youngster who's getting in a lot of pain. And this was some of this like sports psychology stuff was looking at in adolescence, was saying that, okay, don't withdraw. If like looking at that qualitative piece I was looking at, people don't want to watch people because that fear of missing out. But maybe you could help someone develop something that they're struggling with, or if someone else is in pain, maybe you can be there and say, look, it's okay, I saw so and so and they really helped me. It becomes a bit different. It's a different narrative.
There's two little bits there that actually you touched on. So there are the choice of language, I think, is one, and there are, in fact, I know, I don't know whether they still do it, but I know of a couple of ski schools that were really into this kind of I think it's called neuro-linguistic programming, where you've probably looked at that before, and I don't know whether that's outmoded or anything anymore, but they won't say certain words, or they won't do this, that and the other, because of how those words act as triggers on people. And the choice of language, you can see it in people's eyes. Sometimes you slip into it when you're ski teaching, and you say, oh, you even like a little phrase like, oh, it's a little bit steep down here. Right, that sets people off. You can see them; they stiffen up, and you're like, "Well, it's not that steep actually." But the damage is done.
It's like, Dave, if you said that to me, right? I'd be on one of the baby slopes, and you go, "Dave, that's down. It's a little bit steep." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? How fast am I going to go down?"
Well, yeah, and it certain words set off a whole sort of chain effect on people, and you see it in their physicality. If you say the wrong word here and there, and so those people that practice that will only use a certain certain language subset that contains positivity and that sort of thing. There's a whole bunch more to it than that, but every time I get stuck into an NLP book, I'm kind of I don't get very far into it because it's a bit out there, but I think there's validity to it for sure.
Yeah, and I've used it before and I've got a lot from it, but in the psychology domain, it's a bit like, well, it's neuro-linguistic program. And I don't get me wrong. I'm just saying a critique. It's not my opinion, right? I've got a lot from NLP. I want to say that. Yeah. But some of the critique from some of the other domains, like this, is in any profession, what's the neuro part of it? What's the linguistic part of it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you can kind of get the linguistic part of it, but what's the neuro part of it? You know, where's the neurological changes that are going on with the language? What's going on there? So, don't get me wrong, I've got a lot from it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just sometimes the debate is healthy, as we know. You know, it's like, you know, it's just being a bit aware of this stuff, but it does help. And this is, you know, go back to what I said right at the beginning with manual therapy and all that sort of stuff. It helps. You know, I went the other way. I was like, well, the literature doesn't support it, this, that, and the other. But people feel better from it. But you know, what's happened in a whole bigger scale? What's happening there? You know, it's not. Is it because I'm, you know, like we're talking about relatedness to others? Is it because, you know, I'm support? You know, is it because maybe my Davina's at support? I'm not saying that anyone else isn't, but you know, is it because, you know, the environment is very different, and it's just the fact that I've just put my hands on someone is supportive, and it has a whole, it might set off a whole, you know, there's a big, you know, literature on touch, you know, that supportive kind of touch helps people recover. Because of the language, because of the support, because of the stuff we're challenging and all that. But the manual therapy is a very small part of that.
Yeah, and when in addition, I think one of the other things I was going to say was I read a really, really interesting book that was recommended to me by Steve Crisp, actually, because he's had all sorts of issues with his back over the years. Yeah, and he recommended a book. I think it's called Fix Your Own Back or something, and it was by a.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be. I'm not sure, but what he said was, or the premise of that book was that a lot of people's general lower back issues, and actually other you know, could be other parts of the body as well. And I'm pretty sure mine is a physical issue, but it has been helped by reading that book. But it was saying the book essentially was saying that stress in that part of the body is often, for a lot of people, 90% of people, is caused by like turmoil in the unconscious mind. So sort of unconscious stress, if you like.
Was the author John Sarno?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that's it. It's an interesting book. It's a bit out there, but I got a lot out of it.
Yeah,
and I've taken something from that book, which is I now keep a notepad by the side of my bed, and what that book said to basically is just like anything that you're worrying about, even however minor, just write it down somewhere. And that act of writing it down and making it, I don't know, leaving a record of it somewhere, often is enough just to take that unconscious turmoil away. You know, these things turn away in your mind in the night, you know, and you know, just the act of writing them down. And funnily enough, once you start writing, sometimes, you know, I started writing this, I just do 12 pages later, I'm still going. And so I do that every time I'm stressed about something now. And what that does, I don't think it doesn't seem to have any effect on my lower back, which I'm convinced is actually a physical injury issue. But for a lot of people, it just calms you down and it makes you sleep better. You know, just the act of not having all of that stuff jumbled up in your head, it makes you less angry. I think
when you write this stuff down, and you see it on paper, you go, hang on a minute, that weren't as big as I thought it was.
No.
You know, so it challenges that. But on the other side of that, there's a lot of stuff in the literature now coming about gratitude lists. And I think we were talking about this actually, Dave, in November. You know, it's like, okay, what have I got? You know, all right, if we take coronavirus, if we take, you know, a pain experience, if we take anything else, and if we go from that fear, shit, I can't do anything, I'm struggling, I'm this, I'm that, you know, proper horrible narrative that you tell yourself, which, you know, I had that experience as well. Or we go into gratitude and we say, well, hang on a minute, right, let's just look at where I'm at the moment. You know, where am I at? Okay, I mean, let's accept the pain experience, let's accept the coronavirus. We can't change it, right? We can't change it. But where am I at? Okay, so I'm healthy, I'm young, I'm in a loving relationship, I've got kids. You know, I'm not, you know, this is personal to you. It's not kind of, you know, broadcasting that. Sure, But what have I got now that, you know, that I'm grateful for? I've got a roof over my head. I've got food in the fridge. I've got lucky enough to have money in the account. I'm lucky to have good mates to talk to about stuff like this. I'm learning and I feel like I'm growing. So, okay. So when you switch into this gratitude area, you actually realise, okay, all this accepted stuff that's going on around you, but what have I got at the moment that I've got really to be grateful for? And it switches that. It's quite, and it's something that I do on a regular. I haven't done it recently, like for the last week or so, but it's something that when I do it regularly, you do realise, you actually go, you know what, the world's a different place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, coronavirus is horrible, but I was talking to this elderly lady. She was a patient of mine. She was in her 90s, right? And I was treating her for some brilliant lady, full of like optimism, right? I was treating her for like knee arthritis, right? She'd had it diagnosed. She's 90 years old. She's active. She's fit, and it's just this kind of, again, to her, osteoarthritis is painful, but she's still able to move around. It's what you were saying about that language earlier, Dave. Yeah. What does it mean to her? To her, it means, okay, I've got a little bit of knee pain. I'm going to see someone about it, and then I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But she was saying, this was just before the coronavirus kicked off, and it was talking about isolation and all this sort of stuff. And she said, this reminds me back of in the Second World War. In London, I had to make sure this isolation to her, that word, lockdown, meant shutting the curtains and making sure there ain't a peep of light coming through. And you're like, we can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah, well,
okay, so there's a lockdown, but at least I ain't getting bombs dropped on my head.
Well, there is that. There's a lot of people describing, hospitals as war zones and lockdown as being akin to war, but it's not. It's not at all. Yeah. And people that have actually been in war, and I know a few of them, and they.
What do you think of the people in the military?
Yeah, exactly. I know a few of those, and they're like, "Yeah, this isn't war. Yeah. You don't know anything."
But like you said, it goes back to that point, doesn't it, Dave? What does it mean to us?
Yes, it's relative. It's relative
to the individual.
Yeah,
because it's all relative. But when we switch into this place of gratitude, like you were saying, writing down your thoughts and feelings before you get, so you can see them on paper, and you remind yourself to do it in the morning. But these are, it's like the action motivation stuff. If it's that internal, and it comes back to that point on autonomy and competence. If I'm taking care of my own recovery, and in some of the healthcare literature, they call it internal or external locus of control. So if I'm developing this internal locus of control to take charge of my own recovery, and I will get better because I'm healthy, because I'm grateful to have this experience, then the reframing becomes very, like you were saying, becomes very different. But it's not easy. It's this kind of stuff, isn't it? It takes time to practice. It's a practice, isn't it? You can't do it once and expect a miracle. You have to practice it.
It's true.
For it to become ingrained, and that, and it's, there's some other stuff as well. It's funny enough, this self-determination theory, which we've touched on a tiny bit, which says like these basic psychological needs. Part of it is about motivation, internal and external motivation. But that is something that we want to pick up, and I don't know, you might cover it in the coaching realm about how you pick up that motivation in the individual.
Yeah,
it's not coming from us. It's picking that. You talk to someone in pain. What is it you want to do? Oh, I'd like to. By the end of this, I was actually planning on going skiing. Actually, at the end of this, okay. Well, let's work towards you going to skiing. Not so. For me, the motivation might be, okay, I want to improve your back, a certain mobility. I want to improve your hips, or I want to improve your thoracic spine. That's my motivation. But for this person, they want to be skiing in 3 months' time. So a
good instructor does that at the start of any. Yeah, good instructors do that at the start of any lesson. So you kind of you're seeking essentially what the client wants out of the session, rather than you just going, right, I'm going to teach you how to ski. Because that might not be their goal. We talk about this often on this podcast.
As anyone, working with human beings, that's actually quite exciting, because if that person achieves that goal, then they're satisfied and you're satisfied.
Yeah, that's right.
So again, it comes back to that relatedness to others. It's that kind of, when we're with people, that social, what we're meant to do. We're kind of help people develop. There's some kind of literature that would say that, if you want whatever you want in life, you have to learn to give it. If you want something, help someone else get it. Yeah. There's some of that stuff. I can't remember if that was literature, or I can't remember where I've seen that. So take that with a pinch of salt. But it helps me. If I want to, learn stuff, I'm actually getting a lot from teaching at the moment. So so if I'm helping someone learn something, I've got to develop my understanding of it. So it helps me, but it helps someone else, hopefully helps someone else, so we kind of wandered off track a little bit, but, it comes back to that confrontation side of it, doesn't it? How are we going to confront this? And confrontation may be okay. The language might be slightly wrong. How can we, acceptance, I prefer that. How can we help someone develop resilience? How can we build resilience in these people?
Okay. So then to sum up where we are, we've got a little bit at the end here. Part of this, so the model really that I want to be going down is kind of, could be summarized as, acceptance of the injury. It's okay to be injured. I've hurt my back. Okay, we're there now. I'm not going to sit here and worry about why I wasn't putting my pants on properly. It's done. It's done. Yeah. And then the next stage is, okay, well, let's, what can we do about it? I need a rest for a couple of days. I know there's certain things that I can do. That's gonna straighten me back out. That's clear. And then you had a couple of other little bits in here as well, didn't you? Which was to kind of spend time with friends and family. Well, that's kind of unavoidable at the moment. I'm stuck in the house, so.
Well, that could also be a barrier.
Yeah, depends what your friends and family are like.
That's for sure.
And then sort of, what do you mean by this last bit? Pick something you wish to develop.
So by that, it's like, exactly what you touched on earlier, Dave. Right, okay, what can I do? All right, my business now, something needs to change. Otherwise, things might go a very different way. Mm-hmm. What am I going to change? What can I work on now that maybe I haven't done in the past? So if you look at something as a ski instructor, Dave, you might be able to pick something like, okay, you've hurt your back, right? Mm. So there might be a certain move that I can't do, but there might be something else I can work on. I might be able to work on balance. I might be able to work on one-legged balance or something. I don't know, Dave. I'm pulling stuff out of the air.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not able to go out on the slopes, but I can work on maybe some shoulder mobility, or I can work on some ankle mobility, or I can work on some knee strength. Mm. So there's plenty of other stuff that you can do that you could adapt. So by that, pick something you wish to develop. And again, it might be like something you said. I've practiced writing down stuff before bed to help me sleep better, which is going to help recovery. Mm. Mm. So, but that it's like, it's like you see all this stuff going around, Dave. I don't know if you've seen it on social media, and it makes me laugh because it's always interested to know where this stuff has come from.
Right.
It's like, as a someone, I'm going to read all these books. I'm going to learn a different language. I'm going to draw, or I'm going to do this. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. What if you're a parent and you've got two kids pulling each other's hair out?
Yeah.
How does that work? Well, so again, it comes back to the environment, doesn't it?
Yes.
But, and again, it's the take-home message is probably probably pick something you wish to develop is probably a little bit broad, bit kind of meaningless, but again, it's got to come from. It talks about that, that motivation, that desire. What is it that I, in this, so when I injured my hip, I was working on a lot of I was working on some kind of hip mobility, but I couldn't get into a certain position, but I could do a whole load of other positions.
Yeah.
So I could work on my ankle, I could work on my knee, I could work on, kind of that sort of stuff. I could work on my upper back, and I could work on my shoulders. So I can't get into certain movements in the hip. In the of hip movements, but I can get into a whole host of other movements, which are only going to still help. So it's like that sort of stuff. Like, so with you might say, well, okay, so I might be feeling a bit, my kind of this protective position that I've gone in. My shoulders have rounded. I've gone into this kind of hunched position. I'm going to open my chest out. I'm going to work on opening my chest out and that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
which is going to help breathe.
Well, it's going to help. I've had this enough times, right, that I know essentially what my back is doing, and I've hurt the what is it, the L4 disc or whatever, and as such what happens is all the lower back joints lock and not joints, that's the wrong word, muscles lock to protect it. And that puts me into a weird position, and as they gradually loosen off over time, there'll be stuff that I can do. So my plan is, I'll take it easy today. It's a shame I was going to go and grab the bike and go and check my post box in VLAR, but I don't think I should do that today. But
You could walk.
I could walk. It's quite a long walk, but maybe I can go to my more local post box to the other one. And so it's it will take a bit of time. It's not the first time I've been here, so I can. You're right. I can try and get some perspective on this, and then work out a plan to go forward. There's one last little thing on here that I did see, which I think might be quite useful to some of the people that listen to this, where we were talking about relatedness to other people, but there's a bit in here that we kind of jumped over, which is to do with parents and their relationship to children. And if you're trying to recover from injury, there's a section here on pressure, external pressure. Do you want to just to finish off? Do you want to talk about that, which is external pressure from parents or third parties, I guess?
Yeah, so this was coming out of the sports psychology stuff that I was reading, that I was getting, because it was quite interesting, because they were using this, they were kind of using this, the self-determination or the basic psychological needs theory about this sort of stuff. And what they were saying is, as parents, and coaches as well, I'm not obviously saying that everyone does this, because I know everyone doesn't, but it's something just to be aware of. And it fits in a little bit with autonomy. It's, as parents, we have to try and work with what our kids want to do. So from that, it might say, for example, our kids get injured. It's not nice for them, because now we've got to support them and we've got to look after them, because now they, if it's a team sport or a high professional sport, they're now not part of a team. So we can't put the pressure on them. And it sort of fits in with that related, like the above part, that we can help hopefully we can help someone else. But we can't. It's that what we were talking about earlier, Dave. That external motivation. Like we can't push too much, because if we're pushing ourselves on not just kids or anyone else, some people, I've worked with people with this where I've found myself pushing a bit too much. You just get pushed back. So it's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it like that. So it's, and we magnify that with kids. Straight away, you get the toys out of the pram. Literally, Lego goes everywhere or something like that. And so it's that kind of, and it applies to ourselves as well. It's about being kind and just accepting where we are in that moment in time and saying it's okay to be injured. Let's just work with stuff that we can do. Let's not get into any rush. Let's help someone else. That's, where do you want to be? What other skills do you want to develop? So it's not, you've got to get back to this. You've got to do it quickly. You've got to get to this level. You've got to get to that level. They're exactly where they're meant to be in that moment.
It's interesting,
so
because I think
that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think we also see that, don't we, with sports teams a little bit. I distinctly remember, following Arsenal and some other stuff, and you'd often see players rushed back from injury too soon, because I guess they, the team needed their certain skill set or whatever, and I don't see that happening so much anymore. I guess the medical science has moved on a little bit, and they don't hurry people back from injury anymore. People come back when they're ready now. I don't think I see so many examples of that, but that would be a more injury stress happens, right? Because if you rush your recovery. And this is the thing, it's like, we were talking about, that on that, it was like, pick something you want to change or pick something you want to learn or, that you're interested in. As parents or coaches, you might think, I really don't like the sound of that. But to that child or to that person, that's important to them. So we have to support that. So we have to support, if that's something they want to do within reason, obviously, as long as it ain't like binging on McDonald's or something like that. If they want to develop a skill that we don't agree with, that's not up to us. That's up to, then it develops that autonomy in that child, so they take responsibility for their recovery, and we support them through that. So it might be like performing a certain rehab exercise or doing a skill that we don't tend to agree with, but to them it feels like it's helping. So it's important that we support that, rather than don't go, oh no, you shouldn't do that because it's wrong. It's come from the child. We want to develop that, that kind of provision of choice, that choice in the child or in the individual,
because that's up to them. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm getting at. So we can't tell them they're wrong. All right, it might feel wrong to us, but to them it's come from them. As long as it ain't something wild, like jumping off a cliff or something.
Yeah.
But do you see where I'm going with that, Dave?
No, I do, and I think it's something that I think we're trying to do as parents with Zoe. Is I see our role as parents not as how would you explain it? Not as the people who are kind of dictating to her. I see my role as trying to make as many opportunities to find the thing that she's really into available as possible. So it's a question of lots and lots of choices. That would be, I believe in a couple of clear things with regards to parenting. One is like clear lines of what you can and can't do as an individual. Yeah. So clear boundaries. But within that, my role is just to make as much of the world available as to her as possible, and then that will allow her, in my opinion, to find whatever her thing is. And it took me a long time to find skiing, to realise that this is the thing that I like to do. And it might not even be within skiing, it might even be within the realms of business where I'm actually the most interested. But, I was given, I think my parents did a similar kind of thing, was shown a lot of the world in general. And then you can kind of it develops you as a person,
Definitely.
And I think that's how I see my role. It's not for me to decide what it is that she wants to do. It's for me to make available opportunities for her to find what she wants to do.
Yeah. And it's in those kind of it's okay. Like they talked about it. It didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it here, but in some of the other literature, when you play fighting and you're playing and all that sort of stuff, get hurt. See what it feels like to get hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
See what it's like to recover.
Let them
make a mistake.
As a relatively new father, and you're a bit ahead of me on this curve, and you've gone down the crazy route of having more than one.
Tell me about it.
But one of the hardest things I find, and I think it's especially, I'm not being sexist. This is what I observe, but I think it's harder for the female of the species, the mother to see. But I think you've got to let your kids fall over, and you've got to let them try stuff ambitious, and you've got to have that risk there that your kid might get, hurt within reason. So, it's like, if you want to run across there, run across there. If you fall over, fine. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to take the risk out of your life. I can't do that because you bring up people that aren't prepared to take risks. They don't have that experience.
And that's part of exactly what we were talking about earlier on, the social environment of the experience. So it's like exactly that. What message are we giving to our kids? We want to go out and explore, hurt yourself, come back, recover, see what it's like.
Well, this is one of the things that...
Dave, it's easy for us to talk about it now. As soon as I see my son run out along the pavement, I'm shitting myself thinking he's going to run out in the road.
Well, yeah, you're right. I was about to say that he only does that once, but that's not what I mean. Like you can say, that's an opportunity for education. As far as I can see, it's like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this for this reason. You don't put your hand in the fireplace. For this reason. Look, show me your hand. I'll show you that it's hot, but I'm not going to stick my hand in it. But things like I'm still waiting for the moment for my daughter to learn that she needs to kind of very gently test that her food isn't boiling hot before she puts it in her mouth. I don't know how many more times we're going to go down that road, but you learn. These are learning opportunities rather than things to be avoided. If you avoid them, you're bringing up a very
exactly that goes back to my point earlier, isn't it? Pain's a learned experience.
Yeah.
So if I get hurt and I'm rolling around in pain and I'm laying up in bed for 3 days and I'm not doing anything, I'm withdrawing from society, what message is that giving to my kids?
Yeah, it's true.
So we have a responsibility. Again, I can't downplay the pain experience because for some people, me included, it can be a horrible experience because all of a sudden you think your whole life's going to be taken away from you. But how do we respond to that?
Yeah.
And then what message is it given? But if I'm within reason, I'm not saying being silly, but then all of a sudden, if my kids see me doing maybe some movement around, even though I'm in a bit of pain, and they're seeing me, hopefully see it, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal at all, but I'm just saying it's more of I'm saying it because that's the message I want to give, that you recover, and you can recover stronger, and you can recover a better person. It's not the pain experience doesn't have to be life limiting.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just a case of changing certain aspects.
Yeah. Let's finish on your kind of day-to-day osteopathy kind of stuff. But I'm throwing this in there. You weren't expecting this. Maybe you were. But do you
hit me, guys?
Do you? I know you see your fair share of rugby players, and those guys take a real battering. Or I don't know whether you do or your brother does for sure. But what about skiers? Do you see many skiers?
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Dave. I don't.
Yes, yeah. Right? Except me.
Right. So I'm sorry to shoot you down.
No, that's all right.
But I do see people. Obviously, I do see people who ski.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of people I see are normally seeing me before they go skiing because they might have an irritation in their back or their knees or their hips or something like that. So, I don't profess to myself to be a ski specialist.
No,
I can work. I try and work with that person at that moment in time and try and work out what again, it's working out what they can do. Is going skiing really a good idea, or is there something else that they might just have to change their behaviour a little bit or change their activity levels a little bit? But some people I've seen with back pain who are going skiing, it's helped them. Because it takes their mind off it. They're doing something they enjoy. And it might be a case of if you're looking to ski for 6 hours a day, ski for 4 hours a day. See how you feel. If you feel fine, ski for a bit more the day after. If you feel worse, don't ski as much. Don't overcomplicate it.
Do you know, it is funny actually because I often this is an injury that recurs to me often around this time of year, always after the ski season. I put that in my dissertation for the Swiss Snow Sports one, the one that I was talking to you about earlier. And that, that is my experience of the thing, and I'm convinced it's to do with fatigue in that joint over the course of a season. Repetitive movement, sort of fatigue. But I mean, Dave,
if I was talking you in clear, I mean, you have to look at the whole process. You have to look at the whole experience, don't you? It's not. We don't want to focus it down to one individual level. You have to take it in context to what's happened over the last ski season, the time, and then what's happening now, and then the added stresses that brings on.
Yeah,
it's not. This is why sometimes I don't. This is like kind of cause and effect. We have to try and challenge some of that sometimes and say, well, okay, that might be a part of it, but there's a whole host of other stuff that's going on at the moment. And the ski season, I went skiing once when I was 16. There's when Steve always thinks it's funny. I ordered a no cheese pizza. I wanted a slice of no cheese, and 2 pizzas come with no cheese in America. And I don't know why I've told you that story, Dave.
But I suppose what I was going to say. What I was going to say was what I normally do then is that July rolls round. My back is still a bit sore, but then I'll go skiing in the glacier, in Saas-Fee in the summer, and it's a bit stiff, but actually after a little while it sort of loosens off. So it goes back to that kind of, once you're in motion, if you're moving, your body finds workaround, like it works out how to do it. I wonder if it sends, whatever it needs to send to that particular area to allow you to do that sort of thing. I imagine it really does.
You know in yourself what you're capable of, what might be a little bit too much. And that's working with someone with that. And be it a skier, be it a rugby player, be it anyone. I am not an expert in that person.
Yeah.
I can only hopefully work with what they can do and know if you go too far what it feels like. Yeah. And in some of the assessments that I do will challenge that. So it's kind of understanding, you know, if all of a sudden they go into a squat and they're like, that is sending raging neurological symptoms down my legs.
Yeah.
Skiing might not be the best idea, but if they can go into a squat and it feels a bit sore, and they do a couple more, it's disappeared. I'm talking, you know, very broadly.
Yeah.
You know, okay, well maybe skiing will be all right.
Yeah.
You know, so it gets, you know, the individual knows their body better than anyone else. I'm there to challenge it and confront it, like we were looking through in that model. But, you know your body better than anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is, what I want to try and get away from is focusing on one specific area of the spine.
Yeah.
You know, we looked at the environment, we've looked at we've looked at the social aspects of it, and we've looked at life, you know, the context of it. You know, it's one thing that's blown my mind over learning this stuff. Pain is not just based on one individual specific point. It's based on the whole context of what's going on in that moment in time, which is huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the biology. I'm tipping into a different model here. It's not just the biology.
I'm with you.
It's the social aspects of it. It's the psychological aspects of it. You know, because if all of a sudden, Dave, you had this injury now, and you had a high professional exam tomorrow, or you had a competitive event to go to, be it in any sport, that injury then is going to be very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah,
it might be more sensitive. It might be more, you know, it's going to impact the thoughts and the feelings that are going through your body. It's going to impact the way you speak to people. Your social self is going to be very different.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where it's fascinating. So that's why sometimes when, you know, I hear people talk about one specific point. Okay, that's important, but it's the person that we're managing, not just an L4 disc.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right.
Sorry, Dave, I wandered off track there, mate.
No. I think it was a nice summing up, actually. So why don't we tell people where we can find you if people want to get in touch with you? How can we do that? Yeah,
so my email, I think, is on the slide.
I'll add it in the podcast notes.
Yeah, my email's there. I'm more than happy to talk to people. Always happy to talk to people if they've got any questions, if they've got any points they want to discuss on what I've said, or want to challenge me on anything as well. It's always a learning opportunity. I feel uncomfortable doing it, but you know, that's how I learn. Yeah. And contact me on that address, dannymiller702@yahoo.co.uk.
Yeah.
More than happy to answer questions. If anyone wants it, or anyone's kind of, you know, needs support or guidance, I'm more than happy to point them in the right direction. Or again, like I said, question me on anything I've said.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, look, I'm very much looking forward to playing golf with you. I'm all set now. I've bought my golf clubs.
I'm not.
We're ready.
You batter me, mate.
No. Well, you beat me last time, I think. But
I didn't, Dave. You're very kind saying that, Dave. I didn't. I didn't beat you, mate. I lost all my balls before I'd finished the course.
The main thing about that. The main thing about that is you made me like the sport again, which is a good thing. So you know I've got you to thank for that, and I think Mrs. Burrows will be very pleased with that after this summer's out. So yeah, look, I appreciate you taking the time to have this chat. It's been great.
Thanks, Dave. It's been good.
Really, really good.